Accept a plain reality that most people avoid naming. Outcomes rarely match effort in a clean, balanced way, and believing they will keeps you in a loop where you wait while others move. Somewhere at this moment, a person with fewer facts on hand commands a room. Another with a softer grip holds more sway because they understand what stirs people, what images impress, and which levers to pull when eyes are watching. You were taught rules that sounded noble, then placed into arenas where those rules were treated as props rather than limits. You learned to be agreeable while others learned to be effective. You were told to wait your turn while others learned to create the turn. The pattern favors those who study behavior, predict reactions, and structure interactions so that their interests are advanced without asking permission. You do not need to become cruel to escape that trap. You need to become fluent in how people actually decide, how status is perceived, and how incentives shape conduct long before words finish their journey across a table. Begin by retiring the assumption that fairness arrives on schedule like a train. Reciprocity is not automatic. It is engineered through positioning, precedent, and perceived consequence. If you keep handing out respect to people who show none, you are writing the script for your own disregard. If you keep giving time to takers who never return value, you are funding their rise and underwriting your stagnation. The fix is not bitterness. The fix is calibration. Notice what your actions teach others to expect. Replace vague hopes with specific signals. Make it easy for allies to cooperate with you and difficult for opportunists to feed on you. The moment your presence is associated with standards and follow through rather than pleading and reminders, you shift how rooms treat you. The air changes when people feel that crossing you always has a price and aligning with you always has a benefit. That is the kind of mathematics that crowds understand without any lecture. Centuries ago, a Florentine observer watched courts turn on whispers, cities pivot on loyalties, and leaders survive by reading motives rather than speeches. What he chronicled endures because the biology did not change. People still respond to status cues, scarcity, certainty, and the credible promise of consequence. Treat his notes not as a museum piece but as a field manual for modern conversation, negotiation, and everyday reputation. The lesson is simple to state and difficult to ignore once seen. Those who can see the board of human preference as it is direct the rhythm for those who cannot. You do not need to imitate the worst faces of history to adopt the clarity that kept some players standing while others vanished. You need to understand that intention without leverage is only a wish. That kindness without boundaries is a signal that you are available for extraction, and that predictable responses are open doors for anyone who needs an easy win at your expense. Shift your posture from passive recipient to architect of interactions. That shift begins silently in your head and then appears in the choices you make under pressure. Stop telling yourself that patience alone is a strategy. Start designing conditions that make your preferred outcome the most convenient path for others. If you want respect, codify what earns your cooperation and what ends it. If you want time back, curate where your energy goes and announce decisions through action more than speech. Declaring a standard aloud can help you commit, but the real announcement is what happens the first time someone tests you. Make that moment memorable. Replace long arguments with one precise move that changes a dynamic. People remember the move because it costs them something to forget it. Little slights do not need little replies. They need either full indifference that starves the game or a single clear response that resets the rules in a way everyone can see. Reframe ruthlessness as advanced composure. Many think ruthless behavior means volcanic temper or casual harm. The durable version looks nothing like that. It is a cold clarity that treats emotion as a signal to examine rather than a command to obey. Anger says your line has been crossed. It does not say which response secures your position. Disappointment says a person did what their incentives rewarded. It does not say you should try harder to be liked. Channel each feeling into a question. What response narrows this person's options next time? What move raises my status without unnecessary spectacle? What decision prevents a recurring drain on my attention? Sometimes the answer is silence that denies oxygen to provocation. Sometimes the answer is a brief factual correction that makes games expensive. Sometimes the answer is a polite exit that turns access into scarcity. The point is choice over reflex. The person who chooses keeps the steering wheel. Influence grows fastest when others believe your reactions are hard to predict and easy to respect. Predictable appeasement invites testing. Predictable rage gives skilled manipulators a lever. Calm, variable responses tied to principle confuse enemies and reassure allies. People come to understand that your line is real, that your time is allocated by priority rather than by pressure, and that noisy tactics fail on contact. Build a small repertoire of responses you can execute under stress. The first is non-engagement for attention seekers. The second is private surgical correction for partners you plan to keep. The third is public consequence for repeat offenders who rely on an audience. Deploy each sparingly. Reputation grows in the spaces between your actions. When others retell stories about you, they will either say you are safe to cross or that you are inconvenient to cross. Aim for the second and life becomes simpler. Status and likability are not the same commodity. A pleasant surface can buy entry to rooms. It rarely buys a decisive voice inside them. Respect rearranges seats. Approval depends on comfort. Respect depends on consequence. When people only want you to be nice, they will ask for favors you should not grant and assume forgiveness you should not offer. When people value your presence because your judgment carries weight, they think twice before risking access. Do not worship rejection of kindness. Practice conditional kindness that sits on a foundation of criteria. Say yes when it advances your mission or strengthens an alliance. Say no when it dilutes your focus or subsidizes disrespect. You owe clarity to yourself before you owe comfort to anyone. The moment your no becomes clean, your yes becomes expensive and meaningful. That scarcity changes how people plan around you. Train yourself to deliver few warnings and unforgettable execution. Many people talk themselves out of authority by forecasting punishments they never apply. Each empty forecast teaches observers to ignore the next one. If your first boundary conversation does not alter behavior, assume that words will not repair the pattern. Alter incentives. Remove access. Reroute collaboration. End a channel that rewards the behavior. Do it once, deliberately, and in a proportion that fits the pattern rather than the single episode. People will search for your tells. Give them consistency instead. When you say a meeting starts on time, begin on time and lock the door at the mark. When you say credit must match contribution, publish criteria and apply them. When you say the next interruption ends the exchange, stand up and end it. The lesson travels faster than any speech because it saves observers the effort of guessing. Fairness, as commonly preached, often functions like a story designed to domesticate ambition. The more you expect the world to align with that story, the more energy you invest in correcting reality rather than steering it. A better approach is to meet reality on its own terms, then shape what you can reach. Replace the question, how do I get what is fair, with the question, how do I influence what is chosen? Replace the plea, notice my good heart, with the evidence respect follows from how I position myself. Replace the mantra, I did what I was told, with the outcome, I built conditions where the result favored me. None of this forbids generosity. It prevents your generosity from turning into a siphon. Offer help in a way that strengthens your reputation and network. Decline requests that invert that equation. Put distance between you and chronic takers. Draw close to durable collaborators who match your intensity and honor your agreements. There is a quiet art to turning adversaries into reluctant partners. People move when their interests move. Map those interests. Identify where your goals overlap and where they conflict. Offer a path that rewards the overlap and taxes the conflict. If a colleague undercuts you for visibility, create a format that makes joint success measurable and individual sabotage costly. If a client plays games with scope and payment, fix terms that tie delivery to milestones with automatic pauses. If a friend repeats humor at your expense, end the stage by removing the audience or removing your availability. None of this needs cruelty. It requires a habit of turning attention to structure before turning attention to feelings. Structure beats speeches because it survives the mood of the day. Design beats pleading because it makes the right choice easier to choose. Cultivate signals that travel when you are not present. People decide how to treat you before you speak, based on cues they collect and stories they hear. Control the cues. Show up early and leave when your objective is complete. Dress for the room you want to lead, not the room you hope will accept you. Keep your commitments on time and in full. Avoid the urge to explain every decision. Explanations become invitations for debate you do not need. Replace long justifications with simple statements of policy. Let your calendar mirror your priorities. When your tools, timing, and tone reinforce the same story, others carry that story for you. Over time, those compounding signals turn into authority. Authority is the sense that your choices will be made, not merely discussed. It is the feeling in others that testing you produces friction they would rather avoid. Emotional mastery is the engine that powers all of this. Practice observing your inner state without announcing it. Learn what triggers hook your attention and how you can unhook it quickly. Pausing is not weakness. It is the choice that keeps you from doing your enemy's work for them. Breathing. walking, delaying a response until clarity returns, writing a draft and deleting it, changing the setting of a tense conversation from public to private. Each move buys you a few inches of altitude. From altitude, you can see options that rage hides. From altitude, you can assign costs to each path and select the one that strengthens your position. Most conflicts are won by the first person who chooses not to be dragged into the arena that the other prefers. Pick the arena. Control the time. Control the frame. Then act only once. Strategy is not reserved for palace intrigue. Strategy is the fabric of ordinary days. You practice it when you decide what to ignore, what to answer, and what to escalate. You practice it when you design the first 5 minutes of a meeting to anchor expectations. You practice it when you rehearse how to say no in a sentence without apology and how to say yes with conditions that protect your time. You practice it when you uphold your own rules even when bending them would be easier in the moment. The fruits are not instant. They are cumulative. After a few cycles, people notice that you are not a soft landing for their chaos. They notice that you give trust to those who maintain it and distance to those who do not. They notice that you do not chase, you replace. That is psychological sovereignty dressed in everyday clothes. If you want a story to hold while you apply all this, try this one. Influence is earned by the person who aligns incentives, controls access, honors commitments, and is capable of decisive action without unnecessary noise. Weakness appears wherever you beg, over-explain, repeat warnings, or accept a pattern you claim to dislike. Strength appears wherever you make the self-interested choice obvious, enforce your boundary once, and let silence do the rest. People with loud bravado are easy to spot. People with quiet force alter rooms by simply entering them. Become the second kind by shaping your defaults. Default to clarity. Default to scarcity for your attention. Default to proportion. Default to one clean step rather than a cascade of corrections. The cleaner your defaults, the less you need to posture. The room will handle the math for you. Everything here leads to one irreversible shift. Once you teach yourself to read behavior as data, to treat words as signals that must be verified by patterns, and to act based on the structure rather than the sentiment of a situation, you cannot unknow it. You will stop volunteering to be a prop in someone else's play. You will stop waiting for imaginary referees to enforce rules that no one else agreed to follow. You will stop confusing warmth with worth and drama with proof of importance. You will start collecting leverage, one boundary at a time. You will start giving your best work to people who show they can carry it. You will start making decisions that reduce future firefighting. And you will notice a new calm in rooms that used to drain you because you now create the conditions under which you participate. Carry this forward without turning into a caricature. The goal is not to become an oppressor. The goal is to become unexploitable. The goal is to be useful without being used up, generous without being harvested, kind without being counted on as a doormat, strong without performance. You will know you are on track when your calendar reflects your values, when your silence makes the right people uneasy and the right people safe, when your word is short and your follow-through is long, and when unfair moments no longer feel like a personal verdict, but rather a prompt to adjust leverage and move again. That is how people who were once invisible become hard to ignore. That is how the overlooked become the person others consult before they act. So practice. Practice by drawing a line on a small issue and holding it. Practice by saying no to a request that adds no value. Practice by praising in public and correcting in private. Practice by choosing your stage rather than accepting someone else's. Practice by cutting access to anyone who treats you as a resource rather than a partner. Practice by building a small circle that values standards, effort, and reciprocity. Practice until your responses become automatic, until your name means consequence and collaboration in equal measure. When that is true, you are no longer waiting for the world to be fair. You are building a world around you where your outcomes match your design. And in that world, you do not ask for respect. The structure makes it rational. When someone learns that pushing your buttons brings no cost, your reactions become their tool, and every flinch feeds their status. The stronger answer takes another route. Track the pattern, count the repetitions, map the triggers, then respond only once and with clarity. Choose a response that ends the loop instead of fueling it. Sometimes you expose the conduct in a setting where social pressure hurts more than any argument. Sometimes you remove access to benefits they value, such as your attention, time, introductions, or shared projects. Sometimes you align others around standards so the behavior is isolated rather than normalized. The principle is simple. A single, well-chosen move carries more weight than 10 lectures. Your reply should feel larger than the last slight but fair when measured against the full history. Once that landing is felt, observers register a new rule. Disrespect creates cost. Promises are not bluffs. Warnings are not weather. They are signals that action will follow. And after that, people recalibrate quickly. This approach has reach beyond conflict. It shapes how value is understood wherever you show up. Instead of endless explanation of worth, demonstrated in ways that cannot be ignored. Instead of being always reachable, create intervals where you are busy building things that people care about and make access earned by reliability and reciprocity. Instead of debating your stance in circles, take a step that makes the stance self-evident. For example, by setting terms that reward partners who meet standards and quietly removing privileges from those who do not. Make fewer threats, deliver outcomes. Fewer speeches, more structure. People internalize systems faster than scolding because systems repeat without emotion. Over time, this becomes your signature. You are the person whose lines are real, whose follow-through is swift, whose choices are proportionate to patterns, not moods. The reputation travels before you arrive and cleans rooms you never enter because expectations now carry your message. Perception decides outcomes long before evidence is audited. Most audiences will never read your full history. They will read your posture, your tone, your track record, and the company you keep. If you do not steer that picture, someone else will sketch it for their purpose. Treat presentation as translation of truth, not a costume hiding it. Select details that highlight competence and reliability. Share results in a cadence that is respectful and unmistakable. Trim the parts that invite confusion or that reward spectators who prefer drama over delivery. Body language counts, pacing counts, vocal certainty counts, wardrobe signals count, and each of these vectors tells people where to file you in their mental cabinet before you say anything meaningful. If you enter with centered posture, steady breath, and direct eyes, you are filed under authority. If you fold into yourself and speak as if asking permission, you are filed under background. Train the file people choose. Strategic image building does not require fakery. It requires curation. Associate your work with serious people and serious standards. Let your calendar show what you value. Keep a little mystery, not to deceive, but to resist oversharing that turns into leverage against you. Reveal enough to anchor trust, conceal enough to keep opportunists guessing. Practice proof instead of boasts, receipts instead of rhetoric. Two people may finish the same project, yet the one who documents the path, credits the team, and extracts a distilled lesson will receive more invitations than the one who waits for applause to materialize. Social proof compounds, thoughtful visibility compounds, consistency compounds. After several cycles, your public narrative becomes durable, and because it is anchored in real delivery, attempts to smear it slide off. Protect your name the way you protect capital. A strong name lowers the friction of future moves more than any favor can. Meaning is a contest, and narrative wins the contest more often than raw fact. The same decision can be remembered as principled discipline or narrow self-interest, depending on the frame that sticks first. Learn to frame without distortion. Explain why a hard call serves long-term health rather than short-term ease. When criticism arrives, prefer reclassification to denial. Instead of pleading innocence, show the accuser's incentives, show the pattern, show the inconsistent standard. When you win, tell the story that highlights preparation, judgment, and resilience rather than magic. Because the first earns respect and the second invites envy. When you stumble, own the cause, extract the lesson, and publish the guardrail you added so that the stumble cannot repeat. People do not expect perfection. People expect coherence. If your actions and explanations rhyme, the crowd remembers your version because it saves them cognitive labor. Anticipation is the advanced tier of narrative work. Before you act, ask how each interested party will summarize your action tomorrow. Design today so that the rational summary tomorrow favors your intent. If you must end a relationship that drains energy, do not let the other party tell the only story. Clarify succinctly and privately if possible that consistent missed commitments or lopsided reciprocity forced a boundary, and then hold the boundary quietly. If you must restructure a team, attach the reasons to measurable goals and timelines, not to personalities. If you must exit a deal, point to terms that were clear from the beginning. The earlier you set frames that are true and simple, the less room there is for chaos. Control of interpretation is not trickery. It is stewardship. Stories will be told. Better that the accurate one be easy to repeat. Systems beat moods. If your influence rests on how loudly you can react, Adversaries will learn the buttons and nudge them until you spend all day reacting. Replace reactions with rules. Tie access to behavior, not to pleading. Create default consequences that require no announcement. Respect earns a seat. Disrespect loses a seat. Reliability unlocks resources. Flackiness closes the spigot. Credit tracks contribution, not volume of self-promotion. Questions land in writing. Commitments land on a timeline. Missed marks land in a review. When people sense a predictable machine, they do not argue with it. They adapt to it. And because the machine does not tire, you no longer need to spend reserves policing basic norms. Your personality stays out of the loop, which prevents claims that you are singling anyone out. You simply run the play that everyone was shown at the start. A small example illustrates the point. You host gatherings, others leave you hanging. You feel used and start lecturing. That path burns you and bores them. Write a simple rule instead. Invitations go to those who confirm by a time. Attendance is tracked. Chronic no-shows fall off the list. New spots open to those who value the space. No speech, just an enrollment gate that opens and closes by itself. In business, the pattern is the same. Response times are published. Late inputs shift deadlines automatically. Feedback windows are fixed. Scope changes trigger budget changes. By moving behavior into structures, you reclaim attention for higher work. And you teach everyone around you that outcomes are shaped by choices, not by the volume of their texts or the intensity of their apologies. Over time, the system becomes your quiet enforcer. The quiet path is the strongest path. Loud people leak intent. They tell the room where to place obstacles. Quiet builders collect information while others perform, choose timing while others chase attention, and set pieces while others rehearse speeches. Silent dominance feels like inevitability to onlookers. Nothing theatrical, just results that keep landing in your column. This calm surface rests on two disciplines. The first is cunning that detects traps before pride steps into them. The second is presence that halts pushy actors without a scene. Learn both. Practice noticing incentives hidden inside compliments. Practice spotting time sinks disguised as opportunities. Practice saying little in moving pieces instead. By the time anyone maps your pattern, the pattern has already delivered the outcome and closed the door. Strategic discretion does not require deceit. It requires choosing when disclosure serves your purpose. Share your plan with partners who must execute it, not with spectators who will only debate it. Keep emerging alliances quiet until they produce mutual wins. Then show the wins and let people infer the path. When underminers appear, do not chase them with speeches. Cut their oxygen by reducing their reach to you and to key channels. Document their behavior for when documentation is needed, and invest your energy into reinforcing the network that supports the mission. People who thrive on spectacle wither without an audience and without reaction. People who thrive on excellence accelerate when they see the signal that excellence is the currency that buys seats. All of this is a choice, and refusing the choice does not pause the game. Others already practice these moves, often against those who equate kindness with safety. If you ignore the psychology of influence, you still live inside it, only now you are on the receiving end. The better path treats strength and ethics as partners. You can be generous and still have steel in your boundaries. You can be courteous and still remove access when standards are not met. You can be patient and still end loops that misuse patience as cover. The world does not improve because you wish it to. It improves in your circle because you install better defaults and defend them. People who once overlooked you will not change their minds because you plead for recognition. They will change their behavior because you made the alternative expensive. If this lens clears something for you, convert the insight into practice. Replace 3 speeches with 1 structural change. Replace 1 anxious apology with a clean no. Replace a scattered week with a template for meetings, decisions, and follow-ups. Replace a chaotic network with a short list of collaborators who match your pace and keep promises. Replace public corrections with public praise and private fixes. Replace open doors that waste time with office hours that protect time. Replace hunting for villains with tracking for patterns. Each replacement buys you more leverage and returns your focus to outcomes. Soon your calendar reflects your standards. Soon your rooms are quieter because theatrics find no audience. Soon your results speak the only language that matters in competitive spaces, delivery that repeats. Across every paragraph here, the thread is constant. Do not let opponents script your emotions. Do not let chance script your reputation. Do not let noise script your story. Choose your move once. Choose your frame early. Choose your system and let it work while you work. People will test, then adjust. Some will leave, which creates room for better fits. Some will adapt, which raises the floor for everyone. Some will resist in whispers, which the system handles. You are not aiming to conquer anyone. You are aiming to become not worth the hassle to cross and very worth the effort to support. In that position, your influence spreads without announcements, your standards travel without policing, and your time is spent on the work that compounds. That is the architecture of psychological authority that lasts.